From the JAMA Network, this is JAMA Otolaryngology-Head and Neck Surgery author interviews. Conversations with authors exploring the latest clinical research, reviews, and opinions featured in JAMA Otolaryngology-Head and Neck Surgery.
Hello, and welcome to our listeners around the world. You're listening to JAMA Oto author interviews. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Dr. Paul Bryson from the Cleveland Clinic, and today the podcast will have a little bit of a different feel. I'm delighted to have on the podcast Doctors Melina Windon, an assistant professor of otolaryngology, head and neck surgery at the University of Kentucky, and a head and neck surgical oncologist, and Dr. Peter Dixon, assistant professor of otolaryngology, head and neck surgery at the Medical University of South Carolina, and a neurologist. Today, both of these surgeons are our first editorial fellows to the journal, and they are just completing 1 year of a 2-year fellowship. And so we wanted to touch base and give our listeners some information about some of the editorial training opportunities here at the journal. So welcome to the podcast, both of you.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Well, before we get into it a little bit, would you each take a little bit of an opportunity to tell our listeners a little bit about yourselves, maybe your professional journey, and perhaps, what drew you to this editorial opportunity?
Sure, I'll start. So background is that I did most of my training in Toronto. There I also did a master's in clinical epidemiology and finished up some training in San Diego and fellowship and started here at MUSC just about 3 years ago. What drew me really to this fellowship was just the opportunity to learn a little bit more about the other side of article submission and publication from the editorial perspective, and just to network and learn more about that process.
So I did my training at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, and then I did my fellowship training at the University of Michigan. And now I'm at the University of Kentucky. I have 50% dedicated time to do research. And so I was really motivated in using the editorial fellowship as a mechanism to become a better researcher. Similarly to Peter, there's a bit of a black box when you submit a manuscript. You're not sure, as a trainee, as a fellow, what happens on the other side of that, even as a junior faculty member. So I really valued the opportunity to understand a bit more about that process.
Yeah, that's great. It's true, right? We submit manuscripts all the time, and the feedback can vary, sometimes depending on the journal, sometimes depending on the methodology and reviewer quality. So it seems like to be on the other side, certainly I don't review as many articles for the journal in my role as media editor, but I certainly see that a lot goes into it, and certainly having a methodologist and being exposed to some of the conversations, you can't help but learn things. What surprised you the most this year, or what are some highlights, 1 year into this for you both?
I think for me, I guess I sort of knew about it, but it sort of also surprised me the frequency with which the editorial group meets. We have these bi-weekly Monday evening meetings, and the amount of time that's spent dedicated to reviewing all those manuscripts and providing learning opportunities for all the editors across disciplines is pretty impressive, and I think different from a lot of ways that other journals operate. So that's both been a surprise and also something I've really appreciated.
For me, I was interested to find out at our annual board meeting that we were invited to in Chicago. It was very nice to go to the JAMA headquarters, the AMA headquarters. I was surprised to learn how much thought goes into the priority for the upcoming year and review of the previous years in terms of the content that the journal has put out and their impact factor, and how strategic it is to think about, how to maintain excellence in the journal, and how those considerations change during the year based on space. So there's a lot of forethought that goes into that, and it was really neat to be present for those conversations.
The JAMA network is so big, and like you said, it really does take planning, and it's very interesting to see sometimes the synergy and opportunity between the different journals within the network. So, you're in year 1, going into year 2, so there'll be another set of fellows hopefully joining the team. As you enter into year 2, what are some additional things you're looking forward to, or what are some things you're hoping to see or do more of as you kind of round out your experience?
So I don't know, Peter, if you have, but I have not had the opportunity yet to have a manuscript that I've served as a reviewing editor for reach publication. I've got a few that are almost there, but I know that once that happens, I'm going to feel a great deal of pride about the role that I've been able to have in that process. Coordinating the peer review, and all these manuscripts are very high quality at the start, but having a role in improving the quality and getting it ready for publication, it's really going to be very gratifying. And it's already been a gratifying process to kind of have hands in the initial review of those papers.
Yeah, I think for me, the first year is really spent trying to get your feet wet and understand the process. And there's a lot of learning. Now that I've sort of developed a little bit of a rhythm on that front and a working relationship with who I'm directly working with in a mentorship relationship, I'm looking forward to expanding my role and contributing to the journal in other ways outside of editorial review, and specifically things like developing resources for future editors on reviewers and maybe even some educational programs related to that, and specifically in the area of clinical epidemiology, which is one of my interests and passions.
For anybody listening who might want to follow in your footsteps, any words of encouragement that you would offer to somebody, thinking about applying to the fellowship program?
So I would strongly encourage it if you're thinking about it. I think that it has afforded me so many opportunities, and I was kind of looking forward to the fellowship for these reasons, and they really have kind of all come to fruition. First, I've learned a lot from Dr. Piccirillo and his review of papers. He'll provide often his editor-in-chief comments as teaching tools, which has been very instructive. And I've learned a lot about results reporting and about using precise language in results reporting. So that's been very helpful. I think that it's helped my own manuscript writing, my own study design, my own reporting of methods, and my own biostatistical methods. So I'm very appreciative of that. But the other thing is I've also had mentorship with two of the deputy editors. One is Dr. Nosa Ozazua-Peters and Dr. Evan Grayboys, so the deputy editor of Head and Neck and Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. They are both brilliant. I already had a great deal of admiration for them before I started. And now I just get to speak with them with more regularity and learn a lot from them during the editorial process, but then also, as I'm thinking and developing my own research program. So that's been very helpful for me from a career standpoint and a personal development standpoint as well.
Yeah, I think bringing it back to Melina's initial point about making you a stronger researcher, that's definitely been true for me. Just even thinking about conceptualizing projects right from the beginning, when you have the end vision in mind and understand what reviewers are looking for rigorous science, it's really, really helpful to have that perspective. So I think that that's one of the biggest values I've had. And then similar to Melina, the networking opportunities have been very, very helpful for my career.
Well, it's great to hear from you both. Really appreciate your time coming onto the podcast and sharing your experience so far. As you conclude your fellowship time, it'll be interesting to see what you guys both do next. So yeah, thanks for coming onto the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. It's been great.
Well, I'm Dr. Paul Bryson, and I've been speaking with Drs. Peter Dixon and Melina Windon about their experience as the first editorial fellows to our journal. And this episode was produced by our colleague Daniel Musisi at the JAMA Network. To follow this and other JAMA Network podcasts, please visit us online at jamanetworkaudio.com or search for JAMA Network wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.
This content is protected by copyright by the American Medical Association with all rights reserved, including those for text and data mining, AI training, and similar technologies.